There are hundreds of VPNs to choose from, but our sponsor, Private Internet Access, is the only VPN that can fully prove they are not logging your internet activity. There have been multiple real-world cases where the FBI came to PIA with a court order legally requiring them to hand over user activity logs, and Private Internet Access had nothing to give them because they don't log user activity in the first place. Private Internet Access's software is also fully open source, so users can verify for themselves that activity is never logged. You get 83% off, which is just $203 a month, and 4 months extra for free at piavpn.com/DavidP. The link is in the description. Today's show is packed, and not necessarily in a good way. Although it is a good sign that 14 Republicans are breaking with Trump, signing an open letter saying the trade agenda is destroying American farmers. This is the kind of public rebellion Trump probably didn't imagine. Trump is also announcing that he wants nuclear weapons testing to start immediately. He doesn't know who has the largest stockpile. He thinks it's the US, but it's Russia. He doesn't know what the Department of Defense is called, and he keeps talking like a guy auditioning to be dictator of a fictional country. Embarrassing and dangerous. And then we will go to Trump's meeting with Chinese President Xi. He looked weak, confused, and weirdly infatuated with Xi. Even Fox News is trying to figure out how to spin it. And we'll also hear from Fed Chair Jerome Powell, explaining in really plain English why this administration's tariffs and broader economic policy are really not good for the economy. And by the way, RFK Jr. admits they don't really have any causal evidence between Tylenol and autism. Also, did you know that you were paying for Kash Patel's girlfriend to fly around on government planes? Before we jump in, please leave us a 5-star rating for the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It takes 5 seconds, maybe 7. It really helps the show, and it keeps us independent. What a program today. 14 elected Republicans have sent a blistering letter to Donald Trump's agriculture secretary and trade representative. The content is pretty obvious. It's the stuff we've been saying for a long time on the show. But to hear it from 14 elected Republicans is really the story. The letter warns that if we expand Argentinian beef imports, it's going to be bad for American cattle producers. You don't need to be a genius to figure that out. And it also argues, the letter does, that doing that is going to weaken American trade negotiations. Republicans really not holding back here, calling out the trade imbalance. Argentina exports over $200 million in beef to the United States and only buys $2 million of stuff back. It has raised alarm bells about, is this a broader turn on Trump from Republicans that is forthcoming? Let's take a look at the letter dated yesterday to the Honorable Brooke Rollins, the Secretary of Agriculture. And it writes, we write to commend the Trump administration's leadership in supporting America's farmers, ranchers, and agricultural producers. It sort of lays on the glaze a little bit here, but respectfully draws attention in the second paragraph to the recently announced plan to expand imports of Argentine beef as a means of easing retail prices. And it writes that while we share the administration's goal of lowering costs for consumers, we are concerned that granting additional market access to Argentina, already one of our largest beef suppliers, will undermine American cattle producers, weaken our position in ongoing trade negotiations, and reintroduce avoidable animal health risks on the basis of a documented foot and mouth disease. The letter goes on to say, we like diversified global supply chains. That's all good, but we should do these adjustments in ways, essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, that won't be bad for American ranchers, farmers, etc. The letter is signed by 14 different Republican members of Congress, including Jason Smith, the chairman of the Committee on Ways and Means. This is a big deal. This is the sort of story that, the headlines aren't titillating. It's not the sort of thing that will get the deep attention I would argue it really deserves. But the letter makes really clear that Republicans believe Trump's trade policy is actively hurting American ranchers and cattle producers, which I also don't think is news. I think it's been obvious to Republican elected officials for months that Trump's trade policy is bad for Americans, but they've sort of crossed the line to the point where now they're willing to say it, they're willing to put it in writing. This is exactly the kind of Republican pushback that Trump hates. He hates when it comes from his own party. And by the way, it's coming on supposedly a signature issue of Donald Trump trade. If you think back all the way to before Donald Trump even won his first term, so I'm talking 2015, 2016, Trump was claiming that he was uniquely suited to deal with trade. He understood what China was doing to us. He knew the players. He knew the negotiation techniques. He was going to be the guy to fix it. It's not some obscure issue. This is the issue that for a decade, the entirety of Trump's political career and his political life, Trump has been saying, this is the issue I know how to deal with. And he now has 14 members of his own party saying he doesn't know how to deal with this. He's going about it all wrong. It doesn't make sense. Now, I don't think that this is only about beef. It is about beef, but beef is, in the grand scheme of things, beef is a part of trade, which is a part of the economy, which is a part of the president's portfolio, right? So we're talking about some concentric circles here. The fact that 14 Republicans feel confident enough, willing enough to publicly challenge Trump on trade, his signature issue, signals a bigger change, which is that the Republican Party is starting to test, is it better for us to risk the wrath of Trump to publicly defend our constituents and Americans? There was a time where you wouldn't see 14 Republicans publicly rebuke Trump in this way because they were making the calculation. I don't know that they were literally taking out, a pros and cons list, but they were intuitively saying, all right, there's an issue affecting constituents, not happy with the policy, but if I go public against Trump, that could be bad in its own ways. Okay. The calculus has now shifted to the point where they are saying, I am willing to risk the wrath of Trump because I need to speak out. Not speaking out is the greater risk. I'm not saying they calculated it formally in the way I'm suggesting, but intuitively they've decided I got to speak up and there are risks to that. If there is no major backlash from Trump to these 14 Republicans, I would be very interested in seeing how many more letters like this start appearing on other issues. The fragility of Trump's coalition was always kind of there. You'd have the Wall Street Republicans want cheap imports. Rural Republicans want to be protected economically. The evangelical Republicans are more concerned with, does Trump credibly denounce abortion and denounce gay marriage, which by the way, Trump hasn't done. He never has seemed really concerned about gay marriage. But the point is, this coalition has been built out of lack of alternatives, hate for whoever the Democratic candidate is, be it Hillary Clinton in 2016, Joe Biden in 2020, Kamala Harris in 2024. It's a weak and fragile coalition, but they were sort of united in their belief that what would be really bad would be a Democrat. The letter now suggests that I guess we could call it the rural wing, or rural, as some like to say, the rural wing of the Republican Party is not feeling that they have to stay quiet anymore, while Mar-a-Lago makes deals that are bad for them. And it's the big tent kind of ripping at the seams. If they are this openly frustrated to the point where they're willing to publicly sign a letter like this, just 9 months into Trump's second term, where are we going to be in a year? What is year 3 of this presidency going to look like in terms of the relationship between Trump and Republicans? They're speaking out. They're willing to bear the consequences, and this could become very uncomfortable for the White House. Donald Trump is now ordering nuclear weapons to be tested in a completely deranged rant. He's confused about nuclear weapons. He doesn't know who has the most nuclear weapons. Now, I first saw this headline this morning. Trump wants to test nuclear weapons. And I thought to myself, oh no, it's another authoritarian delusion. But I also thought to myself, damn, this guy really doesn't want the Epstein files out there. We have audio from Air Force One of Trump talking about this just hours ago. Let's take a listen.
It could have been a very bad war, too.
Sir, with the nuclear announcement, just one more on the nuclear announcement. Do you worry that we're entering a more risky environment when it comes to nuclear issues?
No, I don't think so. I think we have it pretty well locked up. But we have more than anybody. When I see them testing, I say, well, if they're going to test, I guess we have to test. I'd like to see a denuclearization because we have so many, and Russia has some. Russia's second, and China's third, and China will catch up within 4 or 5 years. I think de-escalation would be, they would call it denuclearization, would be a tremendous thing. And it's something, we are actually talking to Russia about that, and China would be added to that if we do something. Thank you all. It was a great success. It was a
Trump's plan, I mean, think about it. What he's saying is he wants to start a nuclear arms race to denuclearize. Trump then took to Truth Social, where he said, quote, "The United States has more nuclear weapons than any other country." Now, this is not true. Russia has more nuclear weapons than any other country. If he doesn't even, so first of all, I would be shocked if Trump knew what the nuclear triad was, which of course are airplane-based nuclear weapons, land-based nuclear weapons, and sea-based nuclear weapons, like from submarines. I doubt Trump even knows what the triad is. But Trump also doesn't know who has the most nukes. If you don't understand fundamental basics about this issue, are you really well positioned to guide policy? I would say no. But Trump says the United States has more nuclear weapons than any other country. That's not true. He continues, "This was accomplished, including a complete update and renovation of existing weapons during my first term in office." That's also a lie. "Because of the tremendous destructive power, I hated to do it, but I had no choice. Russia's second, China's a distant third, but will be even within 5 years. Because of other countries' testing programs, I have instructed the Department of War," it's the Department of Defense, by the way, "to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis. That process will begin immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump." A reporter on Air Force One then asked Trump about the post. Why did you post about nuclear testing? Why are you doing that? Here's what Trump had to say.
What about resuming nuclear testing? What prompted you to do that right before the meeting?
It had to do with others. They seem to all be nuclear testing.
Russia?
We have more nuclear weapons than anybody. We don't do testing. We've halted it many years ago. But with others doing testing, I think it's appropriate that we do also.
Any details around the testing, sir? Like where, when?
It'll be announced. We have test sites. It'll be announced.
Did Israel?
So Russia, the number of false claims are staggering, given that it's just one Truth Social post and a couple of short clips. Half of the clip is the reporter talking. Russia has a larger stockpile than the United States. Trump is taking credit for a modernization plan during his first term. That was actually an Obama program. It just was completed while Trump was president. Trump didn't interfere, taking credit for something he didn't do, something authoritarians love to do. But also the idea of what's really going on here, and you're going to see this in our coverage of Trump's meeting with President Xi. Trump is obsessed with looking strong like the dictators that he admires. He wants to look strong like Putin. He wants to look strong like Xi and Kim Jong-un. What do strong men love? Nuclear swagger. They love to sort of expose their nuclear arsenal, maybe to try to counteract the small size in other areas like Trump's hands, of course. Now, experts think Trump is reacting to Russia claiming they've tested a nuclear-powered cruise missile. But defense analysts are looking at this and saying this is just kind of dumb. The Soviet-era showboating with weapons, it really isn't of any strategic value. And in fact, there are foreign policy analysts who think there's more value in not displaying what you have. Trump's instinct is I have to look tougher in a very transparent and sort of childish way. And that is straight out of the authoritarian playbook, which is create theater and that sort of thing. But there's a lot to be said about actually not showing all of your cards. Now, Trump is continuing to call the Department of Defense the Department of War. Trump is saying, I have instructed. He's not saying we've decided. And that is another dictatorial sort of language. And third, begin immediately. Never mind that nuclear tests require massive preparation. Trump seems to think they'll just start testing nukes. Where? I don't know. We're going to figure it out. When? Right away. Responsible nuclear powers don't do this. Now, I'm for denuclearization, but I also can say, what is the behavior of a more responsible nuclear power? No nuclear state against other than North Korea has conducted tests recently because democracies tend to recognize nuclear restraint is the strength. It is not weakness. We don't need to detonate warheads because we have sophisticated ways of testing the components. Now, Trump likes, in addition to being enamored with strongmen, Trump also likes a lot of Cold War era stuff. And one of those things is the kinds of testing that have been terrible for Homo sapiens living on planet Earth. I think this is another Putin manipulation at the end of the day. Trump's getting played by Putin and Xi simultaneously. Putin makes a propaganda announcement, and Trump, who desperately wants to be seen as being just as strong as Vladimir Putin, feels he has to respond. Another sign of weakness. You don't look strong when you respond right away and say, well, I'm going to do it too then. And it's not happening in a vacuum. Trump is regularly praising dictators. He's attacking Democratic allies. He's trying to grab authoritarian powers that the Constitution and the law don't actually provide to the president. And we should all be concerned. Trump talks about, the N-word. You don't ever want to say the N-word. And I guess he means nuclear when he says that. That is exactly what he is playing with right now. By Trump's own standards, this is not something you want to be messing around with. And that is what he is doing. Now, if we step back, one of the things that this country was founded upon was let's prevent power from being concentrated in the hands of one person who acts like a king. That's exactly what Donald Trump is trying to do here. And I don't anticipate that unless someone stops him, he's going to get off that train. Do you ever feel like you're being watched online? It's because you are. Even in incognito mode, your internet activity can still be tracked by your internet service provider, by big tech, by data brokers, and even by the government. The solution is our sponsor, Private Internet Access, a VPN that hides your IP address so you can't be tracked online, and so you can access websites and content normally not available in your region. Private Internet Access is the only VPN that can prove in multiple ways they do not log your internet activity. Their software is open source. Anyone can see that the VPN is not logging your traffic. Multiple court cases have happened where law enforcement tried to get user activity logs from the company. The company didn't have them. You can choose from lightning fast IP addresses in all 50 US states and 91 countries. You can use private internet access on unlimited devices with just a single account. And my audience gets 83% off, which comes out to just $203 a month, plus get 4 extra months for free. Go to piavpn.com/DavidP. The link is in the description. The David Pakman Show is an audience-supported program. We do an extra show every single day called The Bonus Show for our members. You can become a member by signing up at joinpakman.com. And I do want to welcome our newest members on the website. They are Marco Tabanzalik. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And Susie Cohen. Very much appreciate both of you. You can read about all of the membership perks as well as sign up in a minute. It takes about 1 minute with average tech skills to sign up at joinpakman.com. I will also mention that if you would like a discount off of the membership, you can use the coupon code It Will End Soon, all one word, all lowercase, sort of an homage to the limited time remaining for this abortive presidency. Joinpakman.com is the website. There is absolutely nuclear cope spreading as Donald Trump completely humiliates and debases himself in his meeting with Chinese President Xi. Trump is in love with yet another dictator. Here is the big meeting where President Xi approaches Trump. Listen to the live translation or interpretation. And why does it all have to be so embarrassing? So embarrassing. You even see Trump at one point kind of lower his head. It's almost like he's bowing. It's all just so weird.
Mr. President, the President of the People's Republic of China.
Good to meet you. Great pleasure to see you again.
Good to see you again.
很高兴再次跟大黑妹。Me too.
And we're going to have a very successful meeting, I have no doubt.
我肯定我们今天会有非常成功的会议。
But he's a very tough negotiator. That's not good.
但是他是很强硬的谈判者哦，这不好。
We know each other well.
我们相互之间非常了解。Mr. President, do you plan to sign a trade deal today?
Could be.
有可能。
I think we'll have a great understanding.
但是我们会达成很好的
We
理
have a
解。
great relationship. We've always had a great relationship.
Oh, the sucking up. I just can't.
这个关系很好，关系总是很好。
我们之间的关系。
那问他是不是还在会买美国的大豆
Will you discuss Taiwan with her? 他们在下面论述。
Which way? Thank you very much, everybody.
It just reeks of weakness and subservience. And, you've really got to ask yourselves, why is Trump so hostile where he throws little digs at the Canadian prime minister and the French president and the British prime minister? And, when it comes to, Giorgia Meloni from Italy, he's talking about her looks. And this guy's a tough negotiator. It just reeks of weakness, and I hate to say it because these are not phrases I use, beta energy. But Trump is not impressed with leaders who govern by democracy. Trump is impressed with authoritarians and certainly with dictators. Now, here is Fox News trying to run cover, and they go, oh, man, you can really tell based on the handshake. Trump's in charge here. He's the guy really in charge.
This is an America First agenda. This is what we voted for, strong foreign policy. And you even see the way he's shaking his hand. President Trump has control of that room, and I have a lot of confidence in this meeting.
Yes, this Fox News person is really confident in the meeting. Well, her confidence was a bit premature. Here are Trump and Xi after their meeting, and then we're going to hear from Trump on Air Force One about how it went. So there goes Trump lumbering off to his vehicle. Now let's talk turkey about the soybean issue. This was a critical issue during these negotiations, to the extent that they were negotiations rather than Xi just telling Trump how it's going to be. Trump promised us we're going to have China over a barrel. Instead, China's soybean purchases from the United States went to 0.0 several months ago. And moments after this meeting, Scott Bessent took to Fox News, Fox Business, to give us the announcement. Thanks to Donald Trump's courageous and principled leadership, my words, not his, China is now going to start buying some soybeans again, framing it as a major victory.
Maria, one of the big parts of this agreement, and I'm going to break the news here on your story, is the massive amount of agriculture purchases that the Chinese are going to be doing in this agreement. So the Chinese have agreed to buy 12 million metric tons of soybeans during this season, right now, between now and the should be January. And then for the next 3 years, they're going to be buying a minimum of 25 million metric tons per annum for the next 3 years. What I would expect is, as President Trump did in 2020, after President Xi had agreed to the phase one.
All right, so listen, I hate to break the news to you. China had been buying 27 million tons per year of soybeans, 27 per year. We're supposed to now get down on our knees and pray at the altar of Trump because Trump has fixed the problem he created by getting China to do 12 million this year instead of 27, 25 million next year instead of 27, 25 million the year after that instead of 27, and 25 million the year after that instead of 27. We are now being told, accept as the victor, accept as your savior, the guy who screwed you in the first place and now has negotiated out of terror a partial fix. This is the classic of wanting credit. As Bernie says, you can't ask for credit for putting out a fire you created in a waste paper basket, right? He created the problem and now he wants credit for partially fixing it. He started the trade war with regard to the farmers in 2018. Soybean exports collapsed this year. He now needs to do taxpayer bailouts of the farmers. And now he says, I fixed the problem. It's not even a return to the baseline. Getting China to buy some, but not all of the soybeans they used to buy is not a win. It just gets us a little bit closer to the status quo that Trump's own policies disrupted without fixing the fact that for months soybean sales to China have been zero. It will be a net loss. What Bessent is confirming, in fact, is over the next 4 years, China is guaranteed to have a reduction in soybean purchases. They want you to think, well, it's going to go from 0 to 12 and then 25, 25, 25. What Trump has achieved is that it's going to go from 27 to 12 and then 27 to 25 and then 27 to 25 and then 27 to 25, all while costing taxpayers money because we're going to have to bail out the farmers. It's like breaking someone's window and then saying, why is no one saying thank you? I'm agreeing to pay for part of the repairs, while framing yourself as the ultimate protector of windows. It's pathetic, and I'm worried that a lot of Trump supporters are so desperate to hear that he's done something to help someone that they're going to fall for it. Donald Trump explained his meeting with Chinese President Xi, and it's completely nuts. I mean, just cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Trump seemed disoriented and disheveled after the meeting, and it is clear, both from the news about soybean purchases and from the demeanor of the two gentlemen before and after, that Xi just dominated Donald Trump. It's another Trump meeting with an authoritarian and another authoritarian who ends up dominating Trump. Trump says, we've got a 1-year tariff deal. 1 year. Have we solved anything? Not really. But Trump says, I have partially fixed the problem I created.
We have not too many major stumbling blocks. We have a deal. Now, every year we'll renegotiate the deal, but I think the deal will go on for a long time, long beyond the year. We'll negotiate at the end of a year, but all of the rare earth has been settled, and that's for the world. I mean, worldwide. This, I guess you could really say this was a worldwide situation, not just the U.S. situation. So
it's a deal that expires every year but lasts forever. I mean, she must just have been laughing hysterically in his limo after this meeting.
Continue to produce the rare earths and buy the rare earths and everything else.
Anyway, enough about the rare earths. We got to move on to other elements of this. What will the rate of tariffs be on China? Trump was asked on Air Force One. Not a perfectly clear answer, as you might expect.
What will your new tariff rate on China's goods be once you sign the deal?
Other than what there's the tariffs remain exactly the same.
55%.
It's about, it was 57, now it's 47. Because we reduced it by the fentanyl.
Yes, the tariff rate was 57, subtract fentanyl, and that gives you 47. Now, I would multiply by chipmunks and divide by cookies, and then we will get the final tariff rate here.
Because I believe they are really taking strong action. We've already
Subtract fentanyl. It's the new measure of global trade.
seen the action on fentanyl, and they're taking very strong action. So we reduced to 10%.
So that November date is gone when it was going to go up again.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
right.
Dear God, Trump has no idea. I mean, just no clue what is going. Every time he meets with one of these guys, Putin, Xi, even Kim Jong-un, they've got his head spinning. He doesn't understand what's going on. Here is another one of these impenetrable word salads about tremendous amounts of soybeans.
Mr. President.
I thought it was an amazing meeting. He's a great leader of a very powerful, very strong
A great leader.
country, China. And I mean, what can I say? We have, it was an outstanding group of decisions, I think, that was made. A lot of decisions were made, too. There wasn't too much left out there. And we've come to conclusion on many very important points, and we'll be handing that to you in a little while. We're having, because there was a lot of different things, many of them very important. We're in agreement on so many elements.
Oh God, he has no idea what they agreed to. Long story short, Trump's in love. I think that's the real story. It is really a match made in heaven. Trump asked, are there going to be new investments from China? You tell me what the answer is.
You were part of it. It was big. Every country, Japan, I mean, you look at South Korea, Japan, and so many other countries that we met there, they're investing tremendous amounts of money in the United States, like money that we've never seen before.
So are we investments from China in the U.S., additional investments, anything like that?
They have investments, and they will invest. And China, I think they feel very strongly. They congratulated me on the tremendous success that we've had.
Yeah, every leader knows, always congratulate Trump. Tell him how great everything's going. It sets you up for him to just lay down for you, which he did.
Because there's never been a country that has had so much money come into it for purposes of investment, for building, for auto plants, for AI, etc. So he was very strong on congratulating me for that.
But he didn't commit to any additional investment or outflow.
We didn't really discuss it.
We didn't discuss it. So the initial answer was it was not part of the conversation, even though Trump first gave another answer. And then finally, Trump was asked, or wasn't asked, Trump decided to rate the meeting from 0 to 10. Take a guess how he rated it. Okay, now take another guess. Okay, and then now go even higher than that. Take a listen.
We're going to issue a statement on some of the details. But overall, I guess on the scale of from 0 to 10, with 10 being the best, I would say the meeting was a 12.
There you go.
I think it was.
The meeting was a 12 out of 10, even though we didn't really get anything other than a partial fix to a problem Trump himself created. What a master negotiator. We are really spoiled here in the United States, aren't we? What a negotiator. Leave me a comment. Send me an email. What do you think? info@davidpakman.com. Many of you know that I grew up speaking Spanish, but I took French in middle school and high school. I'm a little rusty on it. And when I was getting ready for my last trip to France, one of the things I was most worried about was, am I going to be able to communicate in everyday situations, ordering food in French, asking for directions, greeting people? I didn't want to be the person flipping through my phone, trying to translate everything. And what really helped me was Babbel. Instead of like vocabulary lists that go on forever in a vacuum, our sponsor Babbel teaches you language through real conversations. So the French Babbel taught me was super useful on the trip. And the best part is that Babbel fits into quick 10 to 15 minute lessons. So I could fit it into my busy schedule very easily. Thanks to the interactive dialogue exercises in the Babbel app and the spaced repetition that made the phrases stick, I was just more comfortable. I have to admit, my girlfriend was actually impressed with my French when we were in France. I could order at restaurants. buy train tickets, figure out, is there a baby changing station in the bathroom? And also just chat with locals made it way more enriching. You can get up to 55% off at babbel.com/Pakman. The link is in the description. It's great to have Jonathan Karl on the show today, chief Washington correspondent for ABC News, author of the book Retribution, Donald Trump and the Campaign That Changed America. I really appreciate you being here, Jonathan. Thanks.
Hey, great. Thanks for having me.
So I want to start with a couple of the logistics. I've seen some of the interviews that you've done about the book and I've looked at the book itself as well. There's now a lot of reporters who talk about the I texted Trump or I called Trump sort of thing. I'm trying to understand the dynamics of, is it just kind of known that you call Trump and he might pick up and it's sort of like normal and accepted? Has this been Trump's way of communicating with some of the reporters that he knows for a while? Is it surprising, like, for example, when you called Trump the morning after the election and in a sort of haggard sounding voice, as you described, he picks up and he goes, "Yeah, Jonathan." Is this just normal with Trump in covering him?
It's actually a somewhat new phenomenon. Trump has worked the phones with reporters for a long, long time, but it hasn't been so much Trump himself picking up his cell phone and calling, or reporters dialing his cell phone number. I mean, I talked to Trump a lot over the years. I've known him since 1994. During the course of his political life, dating back to call it like, 2013, a couple years before he was running, but when he was obviously out there. I mean, if I wanted to get Trump on the phone, I would call Hope Hicks back then. Before that, if I wanted to get Trump on the phone, I would call a woman named Norma Federer, whose desk was right outside his office in Trump Tower. He was always available, always, and sometimes suddenly your phone would ring and it would be Trump. But at least in my experience, and this might be different for others, it never really occurred to me to directly call Trump's phone. I had his number. And actually, I didn't directly make a call to him until Butler. And keep in mind, that's all of the first presidency. That's all of the stuff that happened after. And what I did, he got the assassination attempt happened, and I called him. That was a Saturday night. We were on live coverage. I called him Monday morning, the morning that the convention was starting, and just left a voicemail saying, kind of like, "Glad you're okay. Really sorry about what happened. That was horrific." And to my surprise, he called me back. And I talked to him on the first day of his convention, 2 days after assassination, for almost 15 minutes. We were like getting ready to go on live. He had chosen JD Vance. There was all this stuff going on, and he just kind of wanted to talk. But even then, I didn't really abuse that. I didn't really, I mean, it's not normal at all, let's face it, to like call a presidential nominee or a president on it's just not a thing that actually, there's always at least one layer between. The next time we spoke over the phone was towards the end of the summer, when he called me after viciously attacking me for this week for our Sunday show on ABC. I had an interview with Tom Cotton, and Trump hated it, and he like suggested he was going to pull out of the ABC debate with Kamala Harris because it was so outrageous, et cetera, et cetera. And I had texted him after that happened to say, "Hey, I'm glad you watched, but did you see the interview with Bernie Sanders, which I had also had on the same show? It was exactly the same. I mean, I didn't treat Cotton any different than I mean, and it wasn't that contentious an interview. I really don't know what got him upset. Anyway, he called me, and suddenly it was like we were old friends. So I started calling him like every couple of days during the campaign. I mean, there would be sometimes where a week or so would go by, but every few days, and he almost always picked up.
What was your sense of what he was doing when he would take these calls?
So I, learned kind of the rhythm of his day, and I tried to call when I knew that he wasn't obviously in the middle of events. He would take calls on the plane at night, on his plane. So this is not Air Force One, obviously. This is the campaign. I would often talked to him in the morning before things were starting. And so he was, in the morning, I think he's watching a lot of television. There was a call I describe in the book where I call him right after going on Good Morning America. This is the Sunday before the election. It was weekend Good Morning America. And he went off on me. Just usually the calls are not contentious.
Yeah.
But because he hated what I had to say on Good Morning America. I was saying that he wasn't focused. His own people were getting upset that, they got a basic message that they want him to reinforce about, comparing his record as president to Biden and Harris. And he's going off on these tangents about shooting journalists and all this, and he was very upset with what I had to say. And I said, well, look, you have the weave. You said it's the weave. You're not. He said, well, the weave got me elected president. Um, and so anyway, it's now since he's president, first of all, I don't call him a lot because it's like I still think there's something completely odd about it. But at key moments when I want to know something or I want to say something, I will call him. I called him the last time we spoke over the phone. Uh, Last time I called him, he picked up, and like I said, even now as president, it's a high percent. As I've told people, it more likely that I would get Trump on the phone when calling him than like the deputy press secretary for the Harris campaign,
Hmm.
or for that matter, one of the spokespeople for Trump. But I called him right after Charlie Kirk was shot, and before we knew that Kirk had died. And he picked right up. Said something interesting, by the way. I said, yeah, I was just calling again to say, really sorry what happened. That was horrible. And it was clear by the way he was talking to me. We didn't know that Kirk had died, but Trump knew because he was talking about him to me in the past tense. And he said to me, he actually liked you.
Hmm.
I don't know why, but he actually liked you. So I don't know, but and I called him the morning after the Iran strikes. He picks up. I called him. God, it was like he was about to do a major address. I think it was also in the wake of Iran. It's because I talked to him a few times around Iran when he was doing a prime time, address, and I called him like right before, and he picks up the phone. So
Hmm.
like I said, I don't abuse that. But
When it comes to the antagonism, Jonathan, that we see in public, like you've been, his ire has been turned on you a number of times, and
yeah,
we saw one of the things I'm wondering is to what degree it might be an act, and the reason that I ask that, and that doesn't mean he's not sometimes genuinely upset, is even like in her book, Kamala Harris describes how for the
yeah,
hundreds or thousands of times that he mispronounced her name in public,
yeah,
the day after the debate, they see each other and he just kind of says something like, you did great. And then after the election, when she calls him to concede, he pronounces her name correctly and says it's a beautiful name, according to her. And it's sort of like he knew how to pronounce her name all along. How much of the public antagonism of individual members of the media do you think is sort of a show?
I mean, it's a lot. A lot of it's a show. Some of it is absolutely intended. He's gotten genuinely really angry at me, um, because I have not, look, I'm not an opinion journalist. I believe that I've got to treat Democrats the way I treat Republicans, but I'm going to present the facts, and the facts, are often, I wrote the book Betrayal about January 6th and was very blunt about his actions to overturn a Democratic presidential election, really to overturn American democracy and the threat that posed and how, the lies that were told. I mean, I don't hesitate to say that. I remember one time when he got particularly genuinely angry at me was during COVID, when we learned of all that he had been telling Bob Woodward, which was completely at odds with what he was saying publicly. And I asked him a question on national television right there in the briefing room. Why did you lie to the American people? And why should we trust anything that you have to say now? And I quite intentionally didn't say, why did you lie about COVID?
Hmm.
I was thinking because it had been just such a colossal collection of lies. And he I mean, you could see him seething as he started to answer and tell me what a terrible question and what a disgrace I was. Um, and then he abruptly ended the press conference after, after we went back and forth. So sometimes it is absolutely, and certainly when it's in private, he's actually mad. But usually in private, it's very friendly.
Right.
And I mean, I've had instances where well, I mean, just the other day, he told me I had hate in my heart, and that maybe Pam Bondi would prosecute me. When I said, "What's this hate speech? Do you really think that the Justice Department should be prosecuting hate speech? Some of your allies say hate speech is free speech." He's like, "Well, maybe she'll prosecute you." Um, and then before he is done fully answering the question, he's doing the weave,
Yep.
and he's telling me he hopes that I take my beautiful wife out to dinner in Washington, D.C. So,
How worried are you about the prosecution stuff? Because I mean, listen, there's clearly a willingness to direct the DOJ to go after political adversaries. People in my space who are not part of a large media conglomerate and presumably would be funding our own legal defenses. I don't think he's necessarily coming after me personally. I hope I'm not on his radar, to be quite frank. But the people in my orbit, we all kind of assume someone is going to get hit with shrapnel who's loosely in our space. I spoke to the Midas Touch guys and Carlos Espina, Aaron Parnas, everybody who's kind of doing what I do. We've seen now that there's been an indictment of a number of people, including a congressional candidate who was at I believe it was a Chicago-based ICE protest. There's a lot of this shrapnel hitting people. You, as someone at a legacy media network, do you have conversations with your colleagues about could the legal system the justice system be pointed at me?
I mean, that's obviously out there in the ether. I can't say that we're sitting around, talking about it. I mean, you basically go about your job and you just know that, as always, you've got to be rock solid in what you say and what you report and make sure everything is backed up. But we've seen that even frivolous prosecutions or frivolous lawsuits can cause a lot of pain. So even when you've got, I mean, look, he sued the Pulitzer board for giving Pulitzers to the New York Times and the Washington Post, and did so in a very friendly jurisdiction down in Florida, friendly to Trump. And I mean, it's a comical lawsuit, but you have to go through if you're one of the people targeted, and it's costly and it's time consuming.
When it comes to the issue of Trump's health, I asked Jake Tapper about this, and it's particularly relevant based on the book he wrote, but also I'm curious from a reporter's perspective. My impression, and I'm trying to be as objective about it as possible, is that legacy and corporate media seems a lot less interested in conversations about Trump's health than they were about Biden's. And there's a few examples of that. Recently, there's this video from just a couple days ago where he's lined up to meet the Japanese prime minister. And listen, he didn't seem demented, but he seemed like he was a little disoriented and kind of not sure where to look, where to go. He's being led around in a similar way as it was alleged Biden was being led around. And it was like kind of a zero story, whereas the Biden examples would get more attention. And so that's like a micro example. And then if I zoom out a little bit, the whole picture of an MRI that wasn't disclosed, why is he so regularly taking cognitive tests? His ankles are swollen. His right hand is bruised from shaking hands, but he doesn't shake hands with his left hand, but it's still bruised. There's sort of like questions that it doesn't seem corporate media super eager to look at. Am I seeing something that's not there, or is there something there?
Well, I mean, first of all, a lot of this goes back. This is not a recent development with Trump. Questions about his the state of his health, the state of his mind. This is why he first started talking about the wonderful test that he asked. Man, woman, person, camera, TV. And I mean, what was do you remember the incident where he walked to a door to open it and there was no door? Or was it,
I don't remember that one, actually. That sounds interesting.
Or that time where he walked down the ramp, I think it was at a military event.
At West Point, where he was sort of like being gingerly helped down it,
Yeah, so that's years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't think, So one thing, just in general for me, I'm not a doctor. I don't think it's my job to kind of speculate,
Yep.
about the health. I didn't, do a lot of stories about, about Biden's health. Is that's absolutely true. I
Hmm.
did do, I did report, that concerns that were raised about, Democrats about Biden running again, and the wisdom of putting another a candidate up there, was as old as he was and appeared more than his age, but also how old he appeared.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's my job to be armchair doctor. So but I think the other part of it is the flood the zone approach with Trump. I mean, there's just so much tonnage. I mean, stories that would dominate for news cycle for a week, come and go in hours. So I think that's also probably a factor in what you're seeing. But look, overall, Trump, I mean, sure, the ankles, the bruising on his hands, and the other stuff you mentioned. He is a very he is just very active, and that whole he projects what he projects authority. Um, it's so I don't know. I'm not going to
Yep.
speculate on his health, but I think there's been a lot of speculation about his health over the last 10 years, literally. And at some point, the speculation will be true. But
Right.
we're,
With everybody.
in the long run, we're all dead. So,
Yes. Last sort of general area I want to ask you about. There are some stories right now that are getting attention that I'm unsure what the longer term political impact will be for Trump or the Republican Party, even into the midterms. Like, for
yeah,
example, the demolition and ballroom construction at the White House,
yeah,
the 42 million people that I think, unless something changes, are at risk of losing food stamp benefits on November 1st.
yeah.
The farmers and ranchers that are increasingly, a group that voted very much for Trump and are increasingly furious with him. Do you think that those stories have the potential to be politically impactful as far as elections go, or are they going to be the sorts of things next November nobody will remember?
I think the stories you mentioned all of them have the potential to really break through, especially, depending on where we are economically. I would add a related thing, was when Scott Besson was on with my colleague Martha Raddatz, and she was asking about soybean farmers. Now, I guess the Chinese are buying a couple of, buying some soybeans now, and
Yeah.
maybe I don't know what, where this is all going to stand, but soybean farmers have been suffering, really suffering. And Besson said, you may not know this, Martha, but I am a soybean farmer.
Yeah.
And so I have felt some of this pain. I mean, I know he may own soybean farms. I don't think the billionaire Treasury Secretary is feeling the same pain that an actual soybean farmer is feeling. So these stories, and you could also add the bailout for Argentina, and the deal on Argentine beef. These are these are things that if people are suffering and the president's building a, $300+ million ballroom, whoever the hell is paying for it, and also clearly really interested in it and spending so much time and choosing marble and how to do. So it's not just the destruction of the East Wing, but it's also talking about building monuments and building, so I think that these stories can certainly be seized on, by Democrats in the midterms, and my sense is each one of those has broken through. It's fascinating to me how the destruction of the East wing has really broken through. I mean, I can sense it in the reaction to the stories that are out there, just anecdotally, and people I speak to. I'm out there on this book tour now, so I'm talking to a lot of people. People are like we're really horrified and concerned to see a part of the White House, brought down.
It's going to be an interesting 12 months and 5 days, I guess, or something like that. That's for sure. I highly recommend Jonathan Karl's book, Retribution, Donald Trump and the Campaign That Changed America. Really appreciate your time today.
David, thank you very much. Thanks for having me on, and I hope to see you in person soon.
A pending Supreme Court case could strip our Fourth Amendment rights and allow immigration agents to come into our homes for any reason, no probable cause needed, all while Republicans try to twist things so that you think this is all great for America. This should be the biggest story in the US right now, but it's almost impossible to keep up with the millions of moves that Trump is making every single day. That's why Ground News exists. Ground News is an app and website that exposes the blind spots and spin before it takes control of our opinions. Ground News is the smarter, more reliable way to stay informed when MAGA is banking on us getting distracted. I'm partnering up with Ground News to give you 40% off the same Vantage plan that I use. So you'll pay only $5 a month for all of their premium features. Just go to ground.news/Pakman or use the code Pakman in the app when you sign up. The link is in the description or scan the QR code. Well, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. sort of gave up the game when he was asked about evidence of a causal link between Tylenol taken by pregnant women and subsequent autism in the child. And he admitted, we actually don't have any evidence of causation. We have an association, but we don't really have the type of evidence that one would demand if they really are going to start taking this seriously. Here is RFK Jr. I can't possibly say it as well as he says it, so I will let him explain it.
The causative association with between Tylenol given in pregnancy and the perinatal periods is not sufficient to say it definitely caused autism, but it is very suggestive. And it's suggestive in animal studies and core blood studies and observational studies from nation to nation. And so there should be a cautious approach to it. And that's why our message to patients, to mothers, to people who are pregnant, and to the mothers of young children is consult your physician. And we have asked physicians to minimize the use to when it's absolutely necessary.
So let me interpret that for you. We do not have any evidence showing a causal link that suggests an increased rate of autism as a result of the mother taking Tylenol while pregnant. Now, I think it is of utter importance to restate that the hedging language RFK uses is already the prevailing medical guidance that doctors give. He likes to throw in phrases like, you really should only take Tylenol during pregnancy when absolutely necessary. That's always the way it is. As someone who's just out of a pregnancy, not personally, of course, but in my household, you can, if you're pregnant, you really consider what would be the reason to use a skin cream, a pain reliever, any medication. You really think that through. And then you say, what are the risks and why am I taking it? And you consult with a doctor and you use as little of anything as possible. You're always, my approach, whether pregnant or not, and that of everyone I know, is I am going to take the least of any medication I can with the goal being zero. The default should be I'm going to take zero unless there's a really good case to take something. This has always been the case with medications for pregnant women and with Tylenol in general. And so when you strip this all down, there's really nothing new other than they are saying we have found what we believe is a causal link, but don't actually have any evidence to suggest that. Now, we talked on the bonus show yesterday how in Texas there's a lawsuit now. Texas is suing the manufacturer of Tylenol, saying they hid the connection. We're going to hopefully get a court to weigh in on this thing. Now, another moment from this little press conference, when Dr. Oz spoke, who runs Medicare and Medicaid, about he was asked about the lack of extension of Obamacare subsidies. And he just kind of goes, nah, your numbers are really made up.
You mentioned at the top that you want medications to be affordable, effective, and safe for Americans. We're speaking today on the day that window shopping began in the Affordable Care Act program on those marketplaces. And that shows that unless those tax credits are extended, those subsidies, the average plan will increase for Americans by somewhere around 115%. Do you believe that Congress should extend those subsidies so that most Americans do not receive significant increases in their premiums?
Where'd you get that 115% number from?
Kaiser Family Foundation.
They retracted that.
They did not retract it. I mean, that's so Dr. Oz immediately goes, they retracted it, not retracted. Kaiser Family Foundation put out a statement saying we just did not retract it.
That data was run inappropriately. They changed the messaging on it. Go back and look at the website. Here's the truth. The window shopping is already revealing that the average American is going to pay who's on the ACA between 100 and 400% of poverty level, is going to pay $50 total next year. It's going to be $13 more than this year. So there can be a lot of hair pulling and scratching and mudslinging, but the fundamental reality for most Americans is that although it is an increase in spend, that's not the big issue. The big issue is the fundamental flaws within the ACA as they were created 15 years ago.
You know, the real flaw with the ACA is it didn't go far enough, and it's all that Obama and Democrats were able to get. That's the real flaw. And even President Obama has acknowledged the sad part is we were only able to do the ACA. I would have liked to have done way more. And the prices are going nuclear. I mean, I think I mentioned I actually have my open enrollment period like everybody else coming up. I'm going to be looking for a different plan. My plan this year as a self-employed person through one of these marketplaces, my plan is $747 a month. So that's what, like $9,000 a year, $8,000 a year. And then I still have a $25 copay for my regular doctor, $60 copays for specialists, some deductible on labs. I don't remember, although some of them are mostly covered. Anyway, my $747 a month plan, I was just notified, is going to $950 if I want to keep the same plan in 2026. I'm going to be shopping around. This is not a subsidized Obamacare plan or whatnot. But the prices are going up. It's outrageous. Whenever I mention this, I get dozens of emails from people in other countries saying, David, $747 a month. That I hope that covers your whole family. And the answer is, it does not. It does not. Yeah. So it's a disaster. And going, oh, Kaiser retracted it. Give me a break. Kaiser retracted nothing. Fed Chair Jerome Powell just dropped a bomb on Trump's economy. This is what it looks like when someone knows things and is able to translate the knowledge into speech. I know that it's a sort of basic human function, but there's a lot of people in this administration who can't do it. Powell, of course, is not in the administration. The Fed chair is independent. And here he explains, what is the effect of these tariffs?
Higher tariffs are pushing up prices in some categories of goods, resulting in higher overall inflation.
Uh-oh.
A reasonable base case is that the effects on inflation will be relatively short-lived, a one-time shift in the price level. But it is also possible that the inflationary effects could instead be more persistent.
Oh boy.
And that is a risk to be assessed and managed.
Jerome Powell is saying things that Donald Trump is not going to like. He explained with regard to the cracks in the job market. Why is the job market getting shaky? Here he is explaining.
What is your explanation for why the job market is weakening right now? And what will this rate cut do to improve the job market?
So I think there are two things affecting the job market. And one of them is just a dramatic reduction in the supply of new workers. And that's two things. That's declining labor force participation, which is a cyclical thing. And then there's declining immigration, which is just a big policy change that actually began in the last administration and it has been accelerated now. So a big part of the whole story is that supply side story. Okay. In addition, labor demand has declined, and so the unemployment rate has gone down, meaning that demand for workers has gone down a little more than supply. So that's what's going on, but it is mostly a supply function. It's mostly a function of the change in supply, I think, and many people think. So the question then is, what does the our tool do, which supports demand, and I would just say, when you're in a situation where job creation, if you adjust for likely overcounting in the way that BLS does its work, is pretty close to zero. So maximum employment doesn't, on a sustainable basis, if you're creating zero jobs, if it's in equilibrium, if it's in balance, it's a pretty, as I said before, a pretty curious balance. So, I thought, and many of my colleagues thought, in fact, you've seen the last two meetings, that it was appropriate for us to react by supporting demand with our rates. And we've done that. We've reduced so that rates are looser. I wouldn't say that they're accommodative right now, but they're meaningfully less tight than they were. And that should help so that at least the labor market doesn't get worse. So it's a complicated situation, and some people argue that this is supply and we really can't affect it much with our tools, but others argue, as I do, that there is an effect from demand and that we should use our tools to support the labor market when we see this happening.
What seems clear, and what Powell also mentioned during his remarks, is you should not assume that there is another rate cut coming. Trump got a couple of rate cuts, which he's been demanding. It's funny because you really only demand rate cuts if the economy is struggling. Trump claims the economy is better than ever, and he's desperately demanding rate cuts. But one of the interesting things that Powell said is that in the near term, he thinks there's a risk of inflation going up and employment going down. And that is not a great combination for the economy.
In the near term, risks to inflation are tilted to the upside and risks to employment to the downside. A challenging situation. There is no risk-free path for policy as we navigate this tension between our employment and inflation goals.
This is a situation that could become stagflation. And if that happens, who do you think Donald Trump is going to blame? And who do you think workers are going to blame? So the big picture, as is often the case with the economy, and you don't need to play politics with this stuff. Some of what we are seeing has nothing to do with presidents one way or the other. There are global business cycles. There is seasonality. There are one-off events like COVID. There are changes to the maturity of certain markets. There are overarching factors that can affect regions, and there's not much a president can do about it. That has nothing to do with Biden. It has nothing to do with Trump. When you want to make a political assessment, you have to sort of exclude the things that have nothing to do with the president. It's sort of like, oh, gas prices were up and then they're down, and here's who was president. Okay, but unless we have a reason to say, here is why the president's actions were relevant to pricing, it's sort of a non-factor. What Trump is doing is he's lowering the supply of labor with the mass deportations, and he is also lowering demand for labor with the tariffs, which as companies lose profitability, they demand less labor. This isn't good for the economy overall. Those are not settings that will lead to a growing economy. And that's where we find ourselves, and it's not pointing in a good direction. While federal workers are facing a government shutdown and 42 million Americans are about to lose food stamps, Trump's FBI director, Kash Patel, appears to be flying his girlfriend around the country on a $60 million government jet. And you are footing the bill, and I am footing the bill. Now, I know many of you will be shocked to hear that Kash Patel was able to get a girlfriend, and that is shocking. That's true. But that is not the scam that I am here to talk about today. You are paying for his girlfriend to be flown around on government planes. Last weekend, Patel showed up at a wrestling event at Penn State to support his girlfriend, 26-year-old country music singer Alexis Wilkins. Very cute, right? Here's a picture from the Happy Couple's Instagram account. It's all great. Except we have the flight logs of the plane that, one of the planes that Kash Patel has access to, showing that the plane in question flew from Manassas Regional Airport to State College Regional on Saturday evening at 5 p.m., then flew from State College to Nashville later that night, the hometown of his girlfriend, and then the next morning from Nashville to San Angelo Regional. Now, here is where it gets rich. Back in 2023, Patel attacked former FBI Director Chris Wray, you know where this is going, on Truth Social, saying he is a government gangster for jetting off on taxpayer dollars while dodging accountability. I want to remind you that at one point during the Biden administration, Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation under Biden, was attacked by Republicans for flying commercial airlines but sitting in first class, sometimes being upgraded based on his personal status with the airline. It seems so quaint. And Pete Buttigieg was actually flying for his job, for actual work-related stuff. And here we have Kash Patel flying his girlfriend around for entertainment. They didn't really care about Pete Buttigieg flying in first class. It was another grievance that they found that they could weaponize against Democrats. Now, FBI directors are required to use government planes for security reasons. But the catch is that for personal trips, they only reimburse the cost of a coach ticket. The $60 million jet, the fuel, the crew, the operational costs, that's on you, the taxpayer. And on top of it, he's now using it to transport his girlfriend. Now, it's not a one-time thing. Back in April of this year, 2 months after taking the job, Kash Patel reportedly made multiple trips to Nashville to see Wilkins, flew her to hockey games. It's just a regular affair that is going on. So next time you're cramming into a middle seat on Spirit Airlines, just remember, the FBI director is flying his girlfriend around the country courtesy of your tax dollars while you sit there asking, could I get one peanut? Even if it's been on the floor, just give me one peanut. It is more of the draining the swamp that we were promised, isn't it? We've got a phenomenal bonus show today. We are going to talk about the Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes interview that many of you asked me about. We will talk about a student handcuffed after a Doritos bag was mistaken for a gun. I hope it wasn't Cool Ranch. And more jewel heist arrests after the Louvre probe deepens. All of that and more on the bonus show. Sign up at joinpakman.com. Remember to hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. It's completely free and it helps us push to 4 million YouTube subscribers. I'll see you on the bonus show.